How's it going, everybody? Welcome to We Do Tech, and also to my look at the Razer Ornata V3, which is a somewhat low-profile, mechanical, cheaper RGB keyboard. So we're gonna take a look at the V3 and see if it's actually worth the price point and for everything that you get, or should you rather spend your money on something else? Because in the more budget range, there's so many different options that you can go for these days. So starting off with pricing, the Ornata V3 is retailing for around $65 or 1,500 Rand for here in South Africa, which is cheaper than the previous V2 at the moment. Which you would think a V3 is going to be newer and more expensive than the V2, but this time it's not. So you do also get the V3X, which is a cut down version, and again slightly bit different in design and only membrane switches instead of the mechanical switches. So you do have that as an option as well. Now, seeing as the Ornata V3 is aimed for a more budget, a low profile keyboard, although it's not entirely low profile, the build quality is a bit on the lower end side, unfortunately. It's entirely plastic with no support plates in the side of the keyboard to support it, so you do have a ton of a deck flex and also a lot of just body flex in general, and you can just hear that plastic squeak. So that I'm not crazy about that, again, especially for the price point and compared to the rest of the competition out there. Now, in the top right, you do get a couple of media controls, which is also a bit different compared to the V2, with only buttons but not keys or even a volume wheel. But you do still get a detachable magnetic palm rest. However, this is also where it's a bit more cut down, or whereas that one actually has a padding, foam padding, whereas this one is just a soft touch of plastic. However, I will say that it's actually still plenty good enough for me. The soft touch plastic is very comfortable, and especially for me typing on the more lower profile, it actually made it so much more enjoyable and comfortable. So I didn't really care that it didn't have any padding on. The soft touch plastic was perfectly fine for me. Now, underneath the V3, you do get plenty of rubber pads for grip, and also the dual level height adjustment feet. Now, as for the cable, it's unfortunately non-detachable, but it is braided, and it does have a length of around 1.8 meters, and you do have a couple of cable raceways where you can angle your cable towards, but unfortunately not towards the sides entirely, just a bit more left or right instead of the middle. Now, for the keycaps, they do have a UV coated matte finish with a complete white coating underneath compared to the black one on the V2, which does give it a slightly better glow for the lighting. Now, what helps it more is that there is a larger gap between the keycaps and the body, which allows the RGB to shine through more compared to the V2, which is a bit more enclosed. Now, as for the switches, both the V2 and also the V3 does use a Razer's mecha membrane switches. Now, the mecha membrane switches are closer to a black or a brown full mechanical switches in a sound, and also with the acceleration force needed. Razer does not state the force needed, but it is quite a bit. So for those who like more softer linear switches like reds or white, these won't be the most comfortable for you to use. However, I did actually quite like them, especially for more typing. That's primarily what I do these days, so I actually did quite enjoy them. However, for gaming, they do feel a bit slow, where you don't have that quick response that you actually need just moving around. So typing better, gaming okay-ish. Now, even though this is a low-profile keyboard, it's not entirely. The switches are pretty much the exact same length and travel distance as normal mechanical switches, so it looks low profile, but that's mostly just because of the keycaps being a bit more lower profile, and you have that larger gap between the body and the keycap. So comparing this to the Deathstalker, there's a big difference between the actual travel distance and just the switches in general because of the height difference. So just keep that in mind if you're looking for a true low profile keyboard. Now, as for how close these mecha membrane switches are to normal mechanicals, it is actually quite close, and I think if you give it to somebody who doesn't necessarily know the difference, they would think these are mechanical switches. So it's very, very, very close. It's just a slight cushioning feeling at the end of your press that actually gives it away. But it is definitely worth giving it a try for yourself to see if you like it. But here's just a quick sound test of how the V3's mecha membrane switches sound. As for the RGB, it's extremely bright and vibrant, it looks so great, but unfortunately it's not a per key RGB backlit, it's only 10 zones. Now it's better than just 7, which majority of the cheaper keyboards have, but again, it's unfortunately not per key, so you don't have full control over all of the RGB and custom effects and so on. But you still get plenty of different effects that you can go through the Synapse software and so on, so at least you do have that. But seeing as there are so many of these budget mechanical keyboards out there these days, which are per key, I think that was a missed opportunity from Razer here. As for the Razer Synapse software, again, you can control all of the RGB effects and so on, adjust the brightness levels, the direction of the effects and so, but you do also have the option of on-the-fly macro recording on the keyboard itself, and you can also customize each key individually for a different command, whether it's a custom macro, where it's to launch a program, so on. You do have all of that as an option as well. So then in conclusion, the Razer Ornata V3 is a bit of a different style of a keyboard compared to just the normal mechanical keyboards we get these days, where it's a bit more low profile, the switches are different, again, being very close to a mechanical switch, but it's not fully there. The switches are nice for typing, but not necessarily the best for gaming, but it still looks very, very good with all of the RGB, and also being more, again, low profile, it does look a bit sleeker in my opinion. But the problem is with the price tag. You do have so many real mechanical per key RGB backlit keyboards, which are even wireless and definitely has a better build construction. So what is the reason that we can actually go for the Ornata instead of one of those? So it does make the Razer Ornata V3 very hard to fully recommend, especially again for the price point. But in the end, the Ornata V3 is still a nice keyboard to have, especially if you can get it for but on a special. I think that's going to be where the Ornata V3 is going to be of a better buy. But you do have plenty of options, and this is just one of them. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Like always, a big shout out to Apex for sending the keyboard over for a review. If you guys want to get it for yourself, I will leave links in the video description, and I will check all of you guys next time. Cheers, guys.